Welcome to our teacher lesson video on Africa. This week we're going to be learning about the continent of Africa. As always, we will be having places to know, a teacher lesson, lots of videos to explore. We'll be practicing, and we have going beyond for kids who want to learn even more about Africa that we don't have time for in class. Starting off, there will be a separate video for our study story this week. However, we have a number of places we need to learn. There are 4 major landforms that we need to learn. The Sahara Desert, which is in the whole northern part of Africa. The Nile River, famous for being in Egypt. We have Lake Victoria, the largest lake in Africa, and Mount Kilimanjaro. We also have the equator going through Africa and the prime meridian, so that's a fun fact. They both go through Africa. We will have a different video this week for our study story, and you will learn all of these locations in Africa. There will be a teacher video, which I am recording right now, put onto the slides here so you can come back and watch. So when we study about a place, we always start with our 5 themes of geography: our location, place, region, movement, and human interaction with the environment. Let's get started. Let's see. We are going to start with location. So where is Africa? Well, we know it's one of our 7 continents. It is southwest of Asia. It is south of Europe. It is east of South America, and it is southeast of North America. Here it is here. The equator runs through it. The prime meridian runs through it. We know where Africa is. We have practiced our coordinate skills. Coordinates are an example of absolute location. It gives you the exact point of a place, as opposed to relative location, which is what something is near. So we will practice that in class. When we talk about place, the theme of place, we are talking about physical and human characteristics. So let's get into that. First of all, here's a political map. A political map is how humans divide up a area of land. And Africa is divided into, I believe, 52 or 54 countries. Physical map shows what the physical features of Africa are. So we can see where there is mountains. We can see where there's deserts. We can see here that there is a view from space, a satellite picture of Africa. And in this picture, you can actually notice how large the Sahara Desert is. It's just an immense, immense place. And when you look out at it, when you're standing on the edge of it and you're looking out, it's like looking out at the ocean. It's desert as far as you can see to the horizon. Just like when you're looking at the Atlantic Ocean, you can see forever and then it just stops with the sky. And that's what it's like to look at the Sahara Desert. It is so big, so big. Physical characteristics, when we talk about a place, we talk about climate. And if I look at Africa right here, and I use my key or my legend, I can determine what my climate is here. It's varied in Africa, as it is in all the continents. So the yellow area here is arid. Arid means dry, so that's our desert areas in the world. Our red area is tropical. Now that's where the equator comes through, and so it's tropical, meaning that it's humid and hot all the time. Then we have some green down in the very southern part of Africa, which is temperate. Temperate means in the middle, or mild, or moderate. So it has like cold weather and it has warm weather. And what else do we have in Africa? Just at the top, we have a little bit of orange, which means Mediterranean. It's actually along this Mediterranean sea, and it is hot and humid sometimes, and it is hot and dry sometimes. It's more of a varied warm weather. And we don't have really a mountain area. So let's go to our next slide. Physical characteristics. We have Mount Kilimanjaro, as we saw in the map, and here's a picture of Mount Kilimanjaro. The Sahara Desert we'll see in another picture, but here's an example of what it would look like. The Nile River comes through. You can see it's green along the Nile because next to the water is where the vegetation grows. And once you get far enough away from the water, vegetation stops growing, and then you get this desert, or you look from space. The Nile River, we've got some rainforests in Africa as well in different parts, and then Lake Victoria. Let's see if we can get to our next slide. So place, animal life, we look at animals when we look at a place, and there's very many different kinds of animals in Africa, depending on what part of the continent you are in. If you are in the rainforest, you would have rainforest animals. If you are in the desert, you would have desert animals. If you are in the savanna, you would have savanna-like animals. Here's an example of savanna. It's grasslands is another word for savanna. Let's take a look at human characteristics. When we look at different places, we look at the culture. Well, the cultures are very different in Africa, country to country. Imagine having 54 countries, and they're different. They're all different. Now, some of them are similar in terms of their history or their climate or the kinds of plants and animals that they have or the resources, but they're very different overall. Africa is a very enormous continent, and all the cultures are extremely different. Human characteristics. When we learn about how people live, the buildings are different in Africa depending on where you are and what the resources are that are available. There are cities and modern cities in Africa that look like cities in the United States, partially, but then there's a lot of different kinds of homes that people live in using the resources that they have. So we have homes that are made out of wood, okay? And if you live in an area of the world that doesn't have access to trees, then you can't have your house made out of wood. So in Africa, where there's trees are more scarce, they use a lot of other materials. They have smaller trees, so they use branches. They use lots of grasses. They use mud bricks made out of mud. So the houses are different. You can see in this is likely a refugee camp that we'll get into later, and they are using tarps and things that can just protect them from the sun and the elements. So people have different shelters around the world depending on what resources they have. Here's some look at some schools. We're so used to, having school look a certain way, and we have electricity, and we have water access, and we have, whiteboards, and we have computers, and we have paper, and we have books. And in a lot of places in the world, they don't have schools like we have. We're very lucky to have what we have. So here are some different schools around Africa in some of the different countries, and you can notice it's really different than what we're used to in the United States. So it helps you to think about how thankful we should be for school. We know we learn in class how education is power, and in our country we have laws about children going to school because it's important that they get an education so that when they grow up they can get a job and take care of themselves and contribute to the economy and to the society. In Africa, there are a lot of places where girls are not allowed to go to school. Girls are not allowed to get an education, or they can't get an education because they're working at home. There's a lot of kids that don't go to school in Africa because they have to travel miles and miles to get to a school. There are also a lot of children that don't go to school in Africa because they have to spend the majority of their day going to search for water to bring home to their family. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. When we talk about human characteristics, we also talk about population. And when I look at this population map of Africa, I can see where my urban areas are. I can see where my suburban areas are, and I can see where my rural areas are. I really can see right here. And we should know already from watching this video why there are no people living in this area. What do you think? It's because this is all desert. This is not fit for really people to live in, so we don't have population there. When we look at culture, that includes religions and it includes languages. You can see there's many different religions, many different languages in Africa. When we study about a place, we like to study about what is life like there? What is the education like? What is the poverty like? What is the access to water like? What is the healthcare like? Do people have access to doctors and medicine? So this is a chart that we can look at. You can pause and take a look at the difference between Sudan, which is a country in Africa, and the United States. And you can see the differences in what life is like in terms of water. Clean drinking water is so important to the success and health of people. And so to have only 55%, half of your water be drinkable without making you sick or making you ill and to even cause death, that's a big deal, right? So take a look at these statistics and see what you can come up with in your mind of what the difference is living in Sudan and the living in United States. Of course, region is a theme of geography, and when we break places into smaller regions based on how they're similar, Africa breaks itself up into regions as just like the United States or North America or Europe or any other continent. So there's several different regions in Africa. Of course, there's different time zones as well that we've talked about in other continents. The theme of movement, how do things get around? Well, Africa has a number of exports, products that go out of the countries and are sold elsewhere to earn money. Coffee and chocolate, corn, cotton, dates, fruit, rice, peanuts, rubber, tobacco, wheat, diamonds. There's a lot of things that come out of Africa. Movement, how do people get around? In Africa, we have a lot of places when a country is unstable and the government is unstable or the government is challenged by a group that wants to take over. We have a lot of countries in Africa that will typically go to war or will be taken over by a dictator, someone that takes power and tries to keep that power. And what happens is when the countries go to war or a dictator takes over, it's very difficult because people are displaced and there's soldiers that go into villages and burn down houses and things like that. And so the people are left without a home. And when people lose their home because of safety or because of war, they are called refugees. Life for refugees is exceptionally difficult because they are thrown out and have no home. So they have to travel for miles and miles and miles and sometimes days and days and days to find a country that will take them in and try to give them some housing. And as you can see from these pictures, the housing is not anything wonderful. So we are lucky in our country that for the most part, our government is stable and our people are stable. And we don't have massive amounts of people that lose their homes and have to travel for days to find somewhere to live and be safe. Here's some more pictures of some refugee camps. As you can see, they are not very clean. They're because they're so dirty and there's not access to clean water, many people get sick and many people die. So refugee camps are a very difficult situation for a lot of people in a lot of different countries. Human interaction with the environment is a theme of geography. And so when humans have to interact with the environment, sometimes they have to deal with things that are difficult, like natural disasters or wildfires. In Africa, they deal a lot with drought. Drought is not enough water. So when there's not enough water, then plants can't grow. If plants can't grow, then animals can't eat. If animals can't eat, then animals die. And humans need water as well. Humans also need water for farming. So when humans don't have water for farming, then they don't have food. And so this is a very bad cycle in a lot of places in Africa because they don't have the access to the water that they need to grow the food that they need. So there's a very difficult lack of resources. And you can see here the dry areas that are in Africa. It's very difficult. Now, one of the reasons that it's very difficult for Africa to have rain is because rain happens in a water cycle. So the water happens in a cycle. So when water comes down, it's called precipitation. It goes into lakes and rivers and streams, and that evaporates over time. And when it evaporates, it comes comes up into the air. It condenses in the clouds. When the clouds get too heavy with condensation with water, it comes back down to the earth. Well, if you have no water down to evaporate, then it can't condense and then it can't fall. So the problem with the water cycle is there has to be water within the cycle. And that's the problem in Africa is there's so little water that it takes so long for it to evaporate and condense and come down that they're not getting the kind of rain that they need to have to keep their crops and their animals alive. Human interaction with the environment, there's a lot of pollution in some places. Deforestation is a problem in places. There are rainforests in Africa. And of course, people need resources and trees provide a lot of resources. So they cut them down to have resources. But when they cut them down and don't replant them, then that becomes a problem because they lose their trees. Poaching is an issue also in Africa because people will come in and hunt animals, and those animals are rare, and they hunt, for instance, elephants for their tusks because it's ivory and it's very valuable that they can sell elsewhere in the world. And so they hunt the animals just to take their tusks, and that is a problem for wildlife. Human interaction with the environment. There's a lot of natural resources in Africa, and there's a lot of places where there's shortage of natural resources. A lot of onions grow in Africa, dates, bananas. There's gold There's diamonds. There are some different kinds of metals that are mined in Africa. Here are some exports. We have coffee and gold and oil, and we have iron and cotton, diamonds, and we have different things, petroleum, cocoa beans, corn. So there's a lot of different exports in Africa. Special purpose map. This is just taking a look at infectious diseases. So when you don't have doctors and medicine, or you don't have clean water, that's the major cause of disease in the entire world, is the access to clean water is not there. Then you have all sorts of diseases that you have. And you can see that throughout the world, there are many areas that have lots of diseases. And these would be the areas of the world that do not have clean water, that have high poverty, that have low education rates and low healthcare rates. And you can notice that we are very lucky to live where we live. And if you lived in Northern Europe, if you lived in Australia and Japan, those areas have better access to clean water, and so then they have better access to health. Water conflicts in the world. You can see that there are some areas in Africa that are red. That's mostly where the deserts are. We do have some areas in our country that we have no access to water, and those are desert areas or grasslands. But you can see when we study about a place, we need to study about water. Water scarcity means there's not enough water. So there's physical scarcity of water in the red areas and the yellow areas. And when we have enough water, those are blue. Look at our world, right? We're very lucky to live in an area that has access to water. And there's a lot of areas of the world that have a challenge getting to water. Groundwater pollution. We talked about access to clean water is so important. And part of that is because whatever is on top of the land gets into the water in the ground, and that groundwater becomes polluted. So if people don't have the proper ways to get rid of pollution on top of the land, it will infect and it will pollute the water underneath the land, and that will get into the drinking water. So that's a big problem in Africa because they don't have in some countries, they don't have modern ways of dealing with waste and dealing with garbage, and it gets into their water. And then, of course, that affects their drinking water. Access to water in a lot of places in Africa is exceptionally difficult. And as I talked before about kids going to school, oftentimes they have to travel for hours or a full day to get somewhere where they can get water. And when they get to that place where there's water, it's not always clean. So you can see that this little girl's pouring out the water that she's brought. You can see these women have traveled. They travel for miles like this to get water. And this container of water will last a day for their family at home for cooking, for drinking. But they've had to walk for miles with this water on top of their shoulders, on top of their heads. Of course, cattle and farm animals need water to survive. So farm animals are very rare and they're very valued because it takes a lot of water to keep an animal alive as well. And when you have to walk to get your water for your family and you can only carry so much, that's very difficult. We are very lucky in our country that we just go somewhere in our house and turn on a faucet. And the water comes to us. We don't have to go. Imagine having to walk for days out of Nashua, leaving somewhere to go find water, and then finding a source of water that looks like this. And that you could also travel long distances to get to your source of water like this and find out that it has gone dry. Okay? So access to water is a huge problem in Africa. There will be a number of videos for you to watch this week. I do encourage you to watch as many as you can because the more you know, the smarter you are. And education is power. I also made a torture video slide for you. And also, it always comes back to the 80s, my friends. Toto. Toto is an 80s band. It sings a song called Africa. So here it is for you because why wouldn't I give this opportunity to you? You're welcome. I don't know what's going to go on this slide, but I thought it was fun. We will do some practice in class this week to learn our countries in Africa, making sure that we're studying. There will be some going beyond videos for those of you who want to learn more about Africa. I have made a number of different slides to give you information and videos about all of these countries. So Morocco and Kenya, South Africa, Egypt. I'll be working on some of these. Madagascar. I feel like there's Sudan down at the bottom. So please take advantage of these extra things that I add to the slides and try to learn as much about Africa as you can, because we won't have all the time in class. So I hope you enjoyed your lesson about Africa. Feel free to watch it as many times as you want and pause throughout the video to take something in. And do not forget to study your locations this week for your quiz. Thanks for tuning in.